lecture of the day and of this conference. So, okay, I am now making Dr. Santamaría, I'm giving her the role of presenter, and now I am unmuting her. So maybe she can say hello.
Can you hear me?
Hello, yes, we can hear you.
Good.
Just a second. Excuse me, ladies. Okay, all right, so all set, ready to go, I think. Bien? Sí. Vale.
Hi.
Could you turn the camera on?
Okay, let me find it, because as I'm sharing the presentation, I don't know where that. Okay. Okay, just a minute. Yeah, here it is. Hi.
Oh, there you are. Hello.
Hello. So, ready when you are.
Okay. Right. Yes. I think you can now move to full screen with your presentation.
Okay, let's go. Now it's there?
Yes. So just a second. All right, so Dr. Irene Santamaría has earned a PhD in English Studies by the University of Castilla-La Mancha, and she has been for quite a long time also a lecturer in English at the University of Castilla-La Mancha. But the journey that we are going to embark on today, I think it's safe to say, that began with one trip to India. Is that correct? So you actually lived in India for 1 year, 1994, 1995, and you worked as a teacher of Spanish in, I'm not sure how to pronounce this,
10 years later, 2005, 2006.
Yes, so you told, okay, so a couple of universities in Delhi, right? You were teaching Spanish at an international school in Delhi, and then you decided to pursue your passion for the writings of Anand further and to make that into a more academic procedure. So in the year 2000, you carried out research for 3 months in Hyderabad University, and at different times you were also admitted as a researcher in the Indian section of the Bodleian Library in Oxford, and in the Indira Gandhi Open University in Delhi, and then in Sheffield Hallam University. And so you specialize in Indian literature in English, and so today you are going to give us a lecture on your favorite author, is it safe to say, the one that you've devoted so many years,
Sure.
so many scholarly endeavors to study. So the character of, is it Gauri or Gauri? The name of
you can choose Gauri, I would say.
Okay, the character of Gauri as a reinterpretation of goddess Sita in Mulk Raj Anand's Gauri. So Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Amaya Fernandez, for having me here and to the Universidad del País Vasco. It's my pleasure to be talking about India. As you said, it is my passion. And okay, I'm going to try to use standard English, but let me tell you in Indian English, I'm very happy. You're very welcome to be here. We're going to enjoy talking about India. Okay, so here you have the title of the presentation, The Character of Gauri, and this is the cover, the book cover. You can see a woman, a veiled woman, that shows, that talks about her modesty. So that is a key word in what we're going to see today. And in the second picture here, she's goddess Sita, and that is the final scene of her story. The earth opens up and she goes in. So let's go on to see what's it about. The outline of the presentation, first we're going to talk about the Ramayana as a sacred text, and then I'm going to elaborate on present-day interpretations. Some are conservative and others from a feminist point of view. Then I will move on to see Anand's use of the myth of Sita in the novel Gauri, and I will give examples of oppression versus empowerment. When I was thinking about the topic to deliver here in this conference, this sentence came to my head, no? Be like Sita. I read it in the novel Gauri by Mulk Raj Anand. So we just have a sentence. We don't know what is it about. Maybe you have heard about Sita, maybe not. So to understand the meaning of this sentence, we need a little bit of the context. This was said in a wedding, and the mother was talking to the daughter. So when mothers talk to daughters in a situation like that, they hope that things will go for the best. But what is the meaning of the best? We need some more cultural context. And for example, maybe the mother in this admonition, she's telling the girl that she should be outspoken. Why not? Or maybe selfless and beautiful. It depends on the culture. Or maybe she's telling the daughter that she should express her will or show her inner white energy, take decisions about everyday issues, or be devoted, have a proper conduct, self-controlled, or useful in society. I'm sorry, too many words at the same time, but make a guess. Make a guess, and the question will be answered as I speak. So the situation is a wedding, the sentence is be like Sita, and what is the intention, no? The illocutionary force of this sentence, we will find out. The Ramayana, it's a very old text. Well, it was written in the 4th century before Christus, but it is part of Indian oral tradition that is much older than that. Basically, it's the story of God Rama and his wife Sita, but there are many, many characters, different episodes, subordinate plots, and also many different versions. Here in the map, you can see Nepal on the north, India, Malaysia, Indonesia. So the Ramayana spread throughout all this area. Here you have God Rama and Goddess Sita. I hope you were expecting some Indian color, so here it is. And if after listening to this presentation, you would like to know more about the Sita, I recommend this book, Sita, an illustrated retelling of the Ramayana. This is the one I have used for the presentation. Some versions of the Ramayana are very hard to read, but this one is it's easier. Okay, so are you ready for the bedtime story? This is the basic plot. Rama is a prince. In fact, he was the heir to the throne of Ayodhya. The couple lives happily there, that is a city in India, until Rama is exiled. Okay, something happens. Despite Rama's attempt to persuade Sita to remain behind in the comfort and safety of the palace, because only Rama was exiled at the beginning, Sita insists on accompanying him into the forest. During their exile, 14-year exile, Sita is abducted by Ravana, a demon king, and she's held prisoner in Lanka, different country. Although Sita repudiates Ravana's advances, when Rama and his allies release her, it is necessary for her to prove her chastity, which she does by mounting a burning pyre and emerging unharmed. She was pure because she was unharmed. Sita is then reunited with Rama, and in due course they reign as king and queen. So it seems a happy ending. It's not, I'm sorry. Sometime later, there are rumors about Sita's fidelity. So you know that the king has to be honest and people have to believe that he's honest. So to counter them, Rama sends her alone to the forest because first time she was with Rama and his brother, but now she's going alone and she was pregnant. So seeking sanctuary in Walmixi's hermitage, she gives birth to Rama's twin sons. Finally, Rama calls Sita to return to Ayodhya, but requires her to undergo a public ordeal by which her integrity and loyalty could conclusively be demonstrated. So we're coming to the end of the story, or this part of the story. Sita agrees, and then she asks the goddess of earth to accept her if she has remained faithful to Rama. Testifying to her honesty, a throne rises from the ground, and seated upon it, Sita returns to the earth from which she was born. This is the throne here, and we didn't mention the beginning. I told you there are many episodes before and after this one, but in this one, Sita was born from the ground. Okay, so a conservative interpretation of this myth says that the Ramayana is a mirror of the highest ideals of Hindu culture and civilization. Rama and Sita are taken as examples. Well, the text, I told you, it is 2,000 and several hundred years old. So what does it have to do with real life or present-day life? Well, a lot. For example, Gandhi promoted the Ram Raj after independence. So, and what is the Ram Raj? By Ram Raj, this is his quotation, I do not mean Hindu Raj, I mean Ram Raj, divine Raj, the kingdom of God. So it sounds conservative. That's it. Then, from this point of view, Rama is the ideal man. He's a dutiful son. He has proper conduct. He's learned, self-controlled, an ideal husband and king. In fact, he embodies the Hindu concept of dharma. Dharma means that you should be the best you can be in the worst of circumstances, even when no one is watching. This is one of many possible definitions. And in the story, there is a constant conflict between Rama as an individual and Rama as a king. And society always wins. That is why he's the ideal king. So, for example, he says on one occasion, Ayodhya, the citizens, matters more than Ram, than himself. My wife, my sons, my brother, my father and mother, I will always uphold the rules. So we come now to Sita as the ideal woman. She's selfless, dutiful, devoted. She's the noblest flower of Indian womanhood, devoted to her lord in thought, word, and deed. So you can see patriarchy doting here with all these virtues. And for example, when she's abducted, she's anxious about her husband. She says, who was feeding him? She felt miserable at the thought of his anguish. So that's how it works. And I don't know if you can, looking at this picture, in fact, it's the same place with two different decorations. If you can recognize any of the utensils, well, it is a kitchen, an Indian kitchen. You can see the rolling pins, and it is Sita's kitchen. She was worried about Rama's food, and this is the place of worship when they worship her as nurturer or, well, cook. And she was banished to the forest by Rama. When this happened to her, what was her reaction? So she understands that Rama has to fulfill his duty. He's a king, he has to follow the rules. And when she understands that he is sending her to the forest, how does she show her devotion to her lord and master? Well, she instructs the servants to do things as Rama likes. For example, to the maid, she says, make sure you mop the floor after sweeping it to eliminate dust. To the cook, she says, pour ghee or butter on his rice because he likes it. To the servant, she instructs how he should perfume his clothes. So, the stories I like today, not only because of what you told, because of what I told you about Gandhi, but it is part of India's folklore. The festival of Dashera celebrates Ravana's defeat. This is the celebration in Delhi every year. You can see the Red Fort. And the one with the many heads, that is the demon king, Ravana. And you see that it's full of people. Also, there is one celebration, the Ram Lila. It is a theatrical representation of the story. It is usually on television. And as Amaya told you, I was working there. So in the school where I was working for 1 month, we nearly stopped with whole school rehearsals of the Ram Lila and all that. And 20 days after Dashera, they celebrate Diwali. Diwali celebrates Sita's rescue when she came back to India, and lamps had to be lit so that she could find the way back. Well, it is also a story told to children. In cartoons, there are posters. Here, you can see the scene when Sita doesn't allow Rama to go near her, and she doesn't want to go to his palace. She remains seated after a tree. They go under a tree. So this writer, Devaksha Mudli, in this article, The Ideal Hindu Woman, she tells us this. As a Hindu, she's a Hindu, I grew up believing that Rama and Sita were the ideal man and woman, the ideal husband and wife. So this is real life. This article was written in the 2020. And she also adds that the subjugation of Indian Hindu women through the metaphor Sita remains powerful. So for feminist women, there is work to do here. Also, the myth of Sita is part of everyday culture. It's very difficult to talk about India and not to mention films or movies. For example, the Ramayana was very popular in the 80s. It was a television series, and the whole of India stopped when it was on the TV. And in this film, Mardani, you can see this woman. She's a police officer. She's rolling up her sleeves in a very powerful gesture. And there is one scene, well, okay, here, the film and the year, modern also. There is one scene which questions the assumption that a woman in a public place is public property, and therefore she can be touched by any man. And in this scene, the protagonist, the woman that you saw in the poster, she says, do you also believe that Sita is the guilty one and not the demon Ravan? And she continues, Goddess Sita is in every woman because, like her, every woman goes through the test of fire every day. Only women are doubted. So we come to a feminist reading of the myth. What kind of model is Sita? Now you can tell me what was the meaning of the mother's utterance, be like Sita. So it is the idea of a long-suffering, ever-sacrificing woman. And this is harmful for women. It reinforces the idea of male superiority and sanctions violence against women. Besides, the fire ordeal was taken as a justification of sati, maybe you have heard about it, or the burning of the widow in the funeral pyre of the husband. In Madhubani art, this is folklore art, we have this representation of Sita surrounded by flames. And in another modern film, this one here, they depict, okay, it is related to sati, not exactly. The scene or the event is called Jauhar. It is self-immolation. This has happened 3 or 4 times in Indian history. And when a citadel was taken by foreign enemies, by a foreign army, the women immolated themselves. And again, this picture is from a modern film, Padmapat, in 2017. And this is the actress, the moment before she throws herself into the fire, and again the silhouette of her. And so there are political implications, actual present day of using Sita, the myth or belief of Sita, depending of if you are Hindu or not Hindu. So a feminist would say, let's reject that plainly. In the feminist magazine Manushi, I remember like 5 or 10 years ago, there were many numbers of the magazine on the web. I was trying to find, because I was trying to find them now because I had one hard drive and it broke completely. And now I have been unable to find them. So I don't know what's happening to that. So there is one article entitled No More Sitas. And the writer says, now we must refuse to be Sitas. By becoming a Sita and submitting to the fire ordeal, a woman loses her identity. This fire ordeal is imposed on women today in every city, every home. Again. So we come again to the same writer I mentioned before, Devak Shamutli, and she states the conflict that she feels. As a Hindu, she says, I cannot disregard my religion entirely. Thus, as a feminist, I must still come to terms with the significance of my faith and its complexities. So, what is the solution? She proposes a re-evaluation, to re-examine the role of Sita, to focus on her positive qualities, on her voice and agency. And there is quite a lot of that. For example, Sita is defiant when she was asked to prove her chastity. She said, okay, yeah, let's go for that. I will do it. So, in this rereading, the positive evaluation makes the figure of Sita emerge as an empowering example. Sita is self-confident. At some point, she says, I'm now Kali. Kali is the goddess of destruction. We will see a picture of her a bit later. Also, when Sita is in the forest, she goes for water, she finds berries to eat, she never rested, she always smiled. Chores were never a burden. So she's possessed of her inner energy, inner happiness. And there is a very, I don't know how to qualify that. She has a link with nature. And this sentence is taken from the book I recommended you before. In the forest, she smiled and unbound her hair, because when the farmer abandons the field is finally free to return to being a forest. So for an Indian woman to unbound her hair, they have these beautiful bands, it means a lot, like they are wild or they are outside society. In the contest of nature versus culture, look at this sentence. He, this is Rama, remained trapped in culture, but nature set her free. I find that this is very peculiar of Indian culture. Like in some other places, nature is seen as a tyrant, the tyranny of nature. Women have to, they have their periods every month. This is inflexible. But in Indian culture, nature sets the woman free. And just as a hint here, I don't know if you have heard about ecofeminism. This is one of the basic textbooks written by the German writer Maria Mies and Vandana Shiva. And they make a link, like if in the same way that capitalism explodes natural resources, patriarchy explodes the women as a resource. So very interesting reading if you feel like. Okay, so we are finding example of Sita as an empowering woman or empowering. Sita is wise. When she is exiled in the forest, look at this. She watched bees and butterflies. She discovered how to collect honey. She followed herds of elephants to reach secret water holes. She understood the migratory patterns of birds and fish. She watches nature. She learns. And About society, there is a nice example. When she's in Lanka, she's held as a prisoner there. She taught people board games. The name Parchisi comes from Hindi, and they passed the time enjoying each other's company, not arguing, not fighting, not trying to prove who was the dominant one. By her sheer presence, Sita turned Lanka into a playground. So, very positive example. Now we come to the writer I am interested in, Mulk Raj Anand. Here is a picture of him. That is his office in Bombay. And he's a writer with a social agenda, social concerns. Sometimes his novels were called communist propaganda. He's worried about the underdogs, the underprivileged, and one of his novels, this one, has a woman as protagonist. And I have taken this quotation from one of his interviews, and he says, "My own experience in life and also in art is that I have found women always weeping." What a sentence. Well, what is his interpretation of the myth? How does the image of Gauri? Gauri means white, is one name of a goddess, is one name, one name of a cow also. So foreigners, I think, no, sorry, for foreigners, where and where. So in England, no, let me see. So yeah, in England, Indians call British, who are not foreigners because they are in England, they call them Gauri because they are white. So Gora is one name for foreigner, but it is used when Indians are in Britain, for example. So what is the comparison with the image of Sita? And we're going to find examples of oppression and empowerment. Oppression. First, Sita. Sita was a victim because she got unwanted sexual attention. She was kidnapped by the Demon King. She was chastity incarnate. She said, "No, absolutely no, I will not go to live with you in the palace." She was abandoned by her husband. She lost everything. She was abducted by a demon, against her will, of course, and she suffers the fire ordeal and is abandoned despite the positive outcome of the ordeal. And examples of empowerment with Sita: she's resourceful. There are, I like very much one scene when she's abducted. She drops jewels, no, a ring, a bracelet, so that they will know, her husband Rama will know the path that she followed. So she's resourceful, and she's outspoken. She expresses her will. She says, "No, no, I will not remain in the palace. I want to go with you to the forest." She has this inner wild energy. I wanted to call it wild. No, like it's fully her, no? And she takes decisions about everyday issues, what they eat, where they go. She learns survival strategies from the forest and the surroundings, and she's useful in society. So these same points we're going to see now about Sita, about Gauri. So Gauri, basic plot again. I hope it's not too much information. Well, she gets married and she goes to live with her husband's family when the famous sentence was said. They have economic problems. She gets pregnant, and the husband, jealous because of the mother-in-law, sends the girl to her mother's home. Then the mother says, "We cannot keep you." She's sold to a second husband, but she gets ill, and the doctor takes her to her hospital. She begins working in a hospital. But the first husband remembers, "Oh, I was married," and he calls her, but she's finally rejected because of his suspicions. So again, the doubt of chastity looms over her. So what is the connection to the image of Sita? This is the sentence that we heard. When Gauri marries, her mother tells her this, so this was the starting point. And when Sita feels some inner conflict, look, what are her resources? Well, in that scene, they say, "It welled up in her the unreal sense of modesty and obedience, and spirit of sacrifice inculcated into her by the elders and the priests." She's a good girl, she's obedient, she's modest. So this is very much part of her upbringing. Examples of devotion. So she's described as a devoted creature, forgiving and gentle baby. About her opinion, Gauri believed in the worship of her Lord and Master and wanted ultimately to conquer him with her devotion, willing to wait like the Hindu wife and go patiently through everything. Gauri's love, manifesting itself in the service of his every need, relieved the pain of his humiliation at the elders and his anxiety about the failure of the rain. So this is how she behaves towards her husband. And very interesting, this last point, she relieved his anxiety about the failure of the rains. She's a stress absorber. This is a very modern concept. I only heard about it recently, the stress absorber, so that his life is more comfortable. She takes up the works. So, examples of oppression, unwanted sexual attention, as much as you can guess, because she has a beautiful and sin-provoking body. This is how she's described. There is one uncle, and he says, I have been fond of you ever since you became a mature girl. You will be mauled by others when I wanted to hide you to myself. She has to hear that. Then when she's working, there is one young doctor who tries to force her. There is an old doctor who cannot help but tell her mother, take her away or I may marry her myself. But she's chastity incarnate. When the young doctor puts his arm around her waist, this is the description of the scene, with a strong twist of her body, Gauri released herself from the doctor's grasp and stood away, frightened and shaking, her head bent as the servants in obedience. So look at this. She has just had a strong reaction, violent reaction. No? She released herself from the grasp, but she's powerless. So her attitude is that of a servant. No? He can do whatever he wants, but with her humility, she tries to get out of the situation. Sita is abandoned by her husband and lost everything. So Gauri is abandoned by her husband when she gets pregnant, her mother because they lack the economic resources, and her husband a second time because of his jealousy. Sita is abducted by a demon. Gauri is on to the second husband. And the reaction to the second husband is that, smarting at the merest touch of his hands, feeling violated, she thrust his arm away with a force that made the old man recoil back against her effrontery. Effrontery, violence, but again, her reaction is to say, I will be a good servant. Again, powerlessness. She spends 2 nights at his place, which makes her first husband mad with jealousy. I hope it's not too much, first husband, second husband. Well, Sita suffers the fire ordeal and is abandoned. There are doubts on Gauri's chastity because she slept in that second husband's house. And when the husband, she's pregnant, well, it was before with the husband, his mother-in-law, really, she was not mother, she was aunt, had been gossiping about her. So he said, whose is it, mine or someone else's? And the fire ordeal, in this case, is water ordeal. They are a peasant community. There is drought. They need water. So he says, if the rains come, then I shall leave my aunt. It didn't rain, unfortunately. So the female characters, you can see after all these examples of suffering, they say, it's suffering for us, sister, suffering, only suffering for us women. So this connects with Mulk Raj Anand's sentence when he says, I have seen women always weeping. But is this all he has to say about women? Let's go on. There is more. So in the same way that Sita was empowered, she was resourceful, she was outspoken, she had the inner wild energy, she took decision about everyday issues, she learned survival strategies, she was useful in society. Again, sorry for going through all the points. Gauri, let's see, when is she resourceful? So they need money at a certain point, and Gauri gives her gold earrings to her husband so that he can sell them. And she says, it will help us pay for the seed and the lentils and the rice till the next harvest. She's adjustable. Some Muslim friends help them, and she says, Muslims make better friends than our Hindus. She's outspoken. Look at this. She's very bold when she uses her husband's name. She calls her husband by his name, Panchiji, the mention of his name in the appeal which no Hindu wife dares to make. They have to use personal pronouns. Say he, her, sir, no, her, no, sir, he, sir, but they cannot use a proper Hindu woman, devoted. She cannot use her husband's name. And look at this, she does. And what happens with the conflicts with the mother-in-law? She tells the mother-in-law, you want two husbands, your own for beating you and mine for loving you. So she's outspoken here. And to her husband, okay, he beats her, but she tells, do not beat me again at her bidding. Or don't be cruel and doubt me. I ask you with my joined hands. Again, join hands in humility. She also has this inner wild energy. For example, well, in her case is violence. She caught hold of Quesaro, this is the aunt, by the bun of the hair here strongly, and with courage and force, dragged her and pushed her to the door and out. Get out of my house, witch. That's what she tells. A sudden flashing of power that had come into the gentle Gauri, turning her into the other incarnation, Kali, the divine destroyer herself. So I told you that Sita also mentioned at some point, I am Kali. What is the meaning of this I am Kali? Again, the husband tells, my aunt is right when she says that this bride is the incarnation of Kali, the black goddess who destroys everything before her. So this is Kali, black destroyer. So look, this image is from the one of, I was going to say the main temple, maybe not the main temple, but very important temple of Kali in Kolkata, Kali Ghat. You can see that she's black. She has different hands and holding weapons, not with this array. She has a garland of skulls. And this is to call a married woman Kali is the worst thing that you can do, because here she's stepping, you cannot see very well here, but on the following slide, she's stepping on her husband. So, and here she has all the weapons and all that. So Kali is the opposite of Sita, the opposite of modesty. Kali is fierce, is fury, is revenge. And another empowerment example of Gauri's attitude is that she takes decisions about everyday issues. And in this case, she tells her husband, separate from them, so leave your aunt's house. I can cook and keep the house. Who does all the work if not I? And here in the picture, I was trying to find the kind of humble place where they would live. So this is very big, no? But imagine this kind of construction made of like simple elements and the kind of Indian cows there, but only one, only one or two. This is a very rich farm nowadays. And okay, another example, no, when this happens, Panchi was surprised at the gentle cow. I told you that Gauri is also the name of the cow, aroused to such a pitch of clear speech. So outspoken, she takes decisions. These are examples of empowerment. And Gauri is also useful in society. I didn't find many examples, but she learns to be a nurse when she's in the hospital. And later, when she comes back to her first husband, she takes care of him. And she says this sentence, I'm going to give you a towel bath. She began to soak his torso. This was very, very noble also at the time. And on another occasion, she shows solidarity, or she displays behaviors of solidarity. During the afternoon, Gauri sat down helping the potter's wife to comb out some raw cotton. So the potter is the Muslim friend that she is in good terms with. And in the picture, this is the flower of cotton, and this is a comb. You have to comb it prior to make thread and then be able to work with it. And I couldn't find more examples in the novel, but it is very common in women's culture that they do many things together, like cleaning vegetables or finding out pebbles in the lentils. Well, Gauri also learns survival strategies. Uh, first, first, she thought, or she was convinced, that her suffering would ultimately redeem her position, but there is a change. So Anand makes her evolve from this image of devoted Sita to the second one, and she turns into a woman with a will of her own. The first time when she was beaten by her husband and she got up determined to protect her womb, she was pregnant, against any further violence from him. And she began packing her bundle of clothes. So, have you heard about the mother bear? I don't know if it is syndrome or situation. Maybe you can bear violence against yourself, but when they are going to be mothers or when there are children involved, or in this case, she was pregnant, it's easier to take the decision and leave an abusive relationship. And finally, the final sentence of the novel. She leaves her husband. She wiped her eyes with the palab or her sari. The palab is the hanging part of the dress. Lifted her head and walked on without looking this side or that. So I'm just finishing. This could be Gauri. This could be her leaving her husband and not looking this side or that. The road is a very potent symbol in Indian culture. One of the first novels written in India is called The Road. India is the land of pilgrimages. Here we have Camino de Santiago. Chaucer had the Canterbury Tales written about pilgrims. So in India, there are hundreds and thousands of pilgrimages, roads, ways, and the road is a new beginning. She's leaving something behind. What is in front of her? So what is the final message of the novel? It's written there. No longer was she the shy, gentle cow that she had been. There was a power in her limbs. She seemed alert and dignified, her movement full of strength. And this writer, Asta Sharma, many of the ideas of the presentation are in this article, a feminist reading of Mulk Raj Anand's Gauri. She says she makes up her mind to face the world and to continue the struggle for her existence with courage and dignity. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, thank you very much. So now we have time for questions, but let me first, if I may, I was just in awe of, how many similarities I can find in Sita's myth, Sita and Rama's myth, and the woman in Proverbs 31 in the Bible. It's amazing how two completely different cultures, in the way that they portray the virtuous ideal woman, the similarities are so, well, amazing. They really are. So having said that, are there any questions? Yes, Maya, I'm sorry, I would have to ask you again. Okay, so now, hello, wait. Hello, yes.
Yeah, hello. Thank you so much, Professor Santamaría, for this thought-provoking lecture, and I've enjoyed it a lot. And I was just wondering, because you've said that, feminists directly rejected the myth of Sita, right? But then that there are some other scholars, female scholars, who try to make most of it, right? And somehow point out all these features, these empowering features, that she was resourceful, that she was able to deal in the woods on her own, so somehow independent, etc. So many good characteristics, positive characteristics, empowering. But then what about, and I understand that, but then what about Rama? I mean, do they even try to save somehow reinterpret this, I mean, his myth, the myth of Rama? I mean, is it even possible? I don't know. What do you think?
Very, very good question. Very good analysis, review of the ideas. So, yes, he seems quite impossible to redeem. He's trapped in culture, he's trapped in his role of the perfect ruler, and in fact, to be a perfect ruler, he's a horrible husband, no? Because he sends Sita to the forest, he banishes her, he doubts her on account on his duty to his people, to his society. And the feminist work I have read does not deal with Rama, only to condemn him. So he's hopeless, I guess.
Thank you so much. So he's still the ideal king, and then the ideal husband for, let's say, for this patriarch, in this patriarch term somehow, this patriarch understanding of culture, but then impossible to redeem by these, well, feminist or let's say female scholars. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, maybe now there is much work on masculinities, so maybe there is work to do there. They can reread the Ramayana and find examples when he is weak, or why not? Maybe it's still to do.
Yes, I was thinking just that.
I can see just one positive, behavior, let's say, at the very beginning, that you said that he wanted her to stay in the commodities of the, in the palace, right? In order not to somehow put her in danger. So this is probably the only, positive feature.
Very good.
Okay.
Quite good. Yeah, he wants also. He's fine. He wants to comfort. He wants comfort for her. Sorry.
Thank you very much for your lecture. I was a bit terrified listening to Sita and Raman. I was wondering about the novel because it was published 1960, right? 1960. Now, how influential, how popular it was? I mean, there are novels that affect the public, that change the opinion, that are enduring. This is 1960, not the height of the feminist movement, I suppose, at the moment. But did it affect the public? Did it cause a discussion? Is it today a forgotten novel or a very important novel?
It is a forgotten novel, although some feminists are reviewing his works like this. So at the time, it was not influential because it was written in English, and Anand complained that regional states were only promoting novels written in regional languages. So he complained, if the novel had been written in Punjabi, it was his mother tongue, it would have been more influential. So he wrote because he had a compulsion to write, but he was unlucky that his novels were appreciated by foreign public. So maybe they were read in Europe because they were written in English. And in India, in the 60s, after 20 years or 15 years after independence, all the movement was still against British rule, British cultural influence, and he paid for that. So it was not influential novel, it was not discussed, not debated. I said it was forgotten, or it's forgotten. Maybe it's not so forgotten, not so much. But because now feminists and women need to rework myths like the one of Sita, the one of Gauri, and it is material available for them. But yeah, I must say that this writer, he was very famous at the beginning of his career, but by this time he wrote because it was his passion, a compulsion, or
If I can just add a question, why would he decide to write in English, therefore, if he knew about, the sentiments in India at that time?
Yeah, because when he began writing, he was in Great Britain, he was in England. So he began writing in English, and he never changed. Maybe he has some stories written in some Indian language, but he didn't change. He began writing in English, and that's what he did. And there was the problem in India, or one of the problems, or who am I to say that this is a problem, is that politics are everywhere. In what you do, what you eat, in the people you're with, in any activity, there are so much politics involved there. So it was a statement. He began writing in English, he wanted to be known outside, and he never learned languages. Some of the writers were bilingual or wrote in, well, of course they were bilingual and trilingual, but some of the writers chose to write, for example, in Bengali and in English, but he didn't do.
Thank you very much.
So maybe it was a way of writing back. I mean, the empire writes back, so writing in English as a way of having his voice heard by the colonizers and in England as well as by his, by the other Indians, perhaps.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, maybe he was writing to the empire. No, look, listen to me now. Yeah.
Okay, more questions? No, we have still time for a couple of questions.
Can I have a comment?
And a comment, yes.
I just have a comment. I don't know if it's just me that watches such programs, but there is this program which is in the United States, in Poland, in the Netherlands, and in India, I found out, which is about buying wedding dresses.
Oh.
You know that one?
Say yes to the dress?
Yeah, say yes to the dress. And I'm sorry, I just noticed very peculiar cultural things. Like if you say yes to the dress in the South, in Atlanta of United States, that's different than New York. But then I saw India, there was say yes to the dress in India. And just like in the America and in European countries, the bride, very seldom does she have her future husband there. And if it is, it's unusual. But in Say Yes to the Dress in India, there's always the future husband sitting. And without his approval, she will not choose that dress. I remember there was this one program where the family said, wear a white dress. And the bride was like, no. And the husband was like, no. And it's just like, I understand that white is problematic for weddings in India. But ultimately she wore it. It was all, Hindu, but white. And then the husband said, you look beautiful. And she was like, oh. And I was just like, it was so culturally different because there's always the husband and he decides. But not just him. I'm not just sure if I read the culture well. It's also the mother. The future mother-in-law and the mother. Somehow the father is not really that important, but the mother-in-law, and the husband. I don't know if I read that culture right, but I just a comment because I was struck by that difference between, buying a wedding dress.
Yes, even in very, I'm sorry, please go. Sorry, do you have any comments, Irene?
No, it's not. I enjoyed very much listening to hearing about this show. Mothers and mother-in-law are the most important ones, and fathers are smoking outside. I guess. I don't know, but thank you for your ideas.
No, I was just saying that it was quite strange to me that if it's such a patriarchal culture, why is it that the mother figure is so important and the husband is so important, but then the mothers are so important and the father suddenly, does not decide?
Because it's now the time for the man,
new man to take over.
The groom to become a father, a patriarch. Yeah. So perhaps it's just now, it's his, it's contrary to, for instance, there's another show called My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding.
Yes.
So travelers from Ireland in particular, and how it's the bride's day. She is queen. She gets to decide upon absolutely everything. The groom has to abide by her decisions and say nothing. It's her day, probably the only one.
Her last day.
Yes, but at least she has that. Okay.
Okay, I'd like to say that patriarchy is such a well-oiled machine in India that even the father does not need to be there, because mother and mother-in-law and the son and the bride-to-be, they will do everything as is expected from them by patriarchy, and so they are the power, they are the authority, even if they are not there.
Yes, very good observation.
Terrifying.
Could be.
No?
A male voice, maybe?
I think
Any male voices? Yeah, no?
so. I was thinking of another transtextual. Well, it's not transtextual because I don't. Is it possible that Anand would have read Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter? Do you think? Is it?
Can you repeat? Like I was.
Yes, The Scarlet Letter, Hawthorne. Nathaniel Hawthorne, The Scarlet Letter, La Lettera Scarlata.
He was such an avid reader. I'm not sure. Like he mentions Russian authors, and of course Jane Austen. He loved Jane Austen and Dickens. So very much British culture, French writers also. But I have not heard about the Scarlet Letter.
Because I was
What
just.
is the connection? Or
I was thinking about the scene, but maybe it's not Anand, but just focusing on Sita's myth, the moment in which she is in the forest and she lets her hair down, right? And that's when she feels free in the forest. I was thinking of Esther, if you remember, when she, for the first time, and when she can breathe and she takes the Puritan coif off her head. And I think that's when she takes the Scarlet Letter off, and then Pearl is so upset to put it on back because, anyway, just remind me of that. So making a cross-cultural references, I guess.
very powerful moment, yeah.
Okay, so, well, it's been a
Thank
pleasure
you.
having you here. I loved learning about this myth, and even more importantly, learning about Anand's subversion or reclaiming, I should say, perhaps, of this myth. And so I'm also grateful for all the lectures that we have been, we've had today. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming and being here with us. I hope you have enjoyed the experience, and I hope you will be back next year. Okay, so thank you very much.
It's been great. Thank you.